Have you ever noticed how your mind never seems to stop? One thought drifts into another, looping endlessly like a river caught in a whirlpool. You replay conversations, dissect choices you've made, imagine what could go wrong tomorrow, and somehow none of it ever resolves. It's exhausting, isn't it? The world outside moves forward, yet inside you feel stuck, tangled in the threads of your own thinking. Every decision, every hesitation, every quiet moment becomes a battleground where your mind refuses to rest. You wake up with a list of worries, go to sleep with regrets, and in between, there's this constant, gnawing tension that nothing seems to relieve. And the strange truth is, most of the time, the problems themselves aren't even the enemy. It's not the missed opportunities, the looming deadlines, or the mistakes of yesterday. The real prison is the habit of your own mind, the compulsive need to hold on to every thought, to analyze, to anticipate, to control. That is what creates the weight you carry. Imagine for a moment a mind that isn't trapped, a mind that moves like water, flowing naturally from one moment to the next without clinging, without judgment, without panic. The difference is subtle yet profound. The thinking mind wants to solve, to fix, to predict. The flowing mind simply observes, embraces, and lets go. It experiences life directly, moment by moment, without the filter of constant evaluation. You feel lighter, freer, more alive. The tension begins to dissolve, not because your problems disappear, but because your relationship with them changes. There is a space between thought and action where clarity arises, a quiet current that carries you forward without effort. Most of us never discover it because we mistake busyness for progress and mental chatter for insight. We forget that stillness is not emptiness, but a source of deep energy. There is a principle the ancient Japanese called ku no sekai, the world of emptiness. It is not about doing nothing, nor is it about escaping responsibility. It is a way of moving through life unburdened by the endless loop of thought, a path where the mind and body flow in harmony with what is, rather than what might be. It is subtle, yet transformative, and it has been guiding thinkers, warriors, and creators for centuries. If you have felt the weight of overthinking, the constant friction between desire and doubt, ku no sekai may be the antidote you've been searching for. It promises a freedom that is felt, not imagined, a clarity that doesn't come from planning, but from presence. And that is where our journey begins. Have you ever felt your mind racing long after the world has gone quiet? Scrolling, swiping, reading, replying. Our days are filled with a constant stream of information, notifications pinging, opinions and comparisons flooding our attention. Every article, every social post, every conversation becomes fuel for the mind to analyze, to predict, to judge. It is no wonder that by evening we feel mentally stretched thin, like a rope pulled taut from both ends. The modern mind has become overstimulated, wired to react, to calculate, to anticipate endlessly. Even the simplest choice, what to eat, what to say, which project to focus on, becomes a battleground of possibilities. And this isn't just busyness. It is a deep, invisible pressure that shapes how we think about ourselves, how we measure our worth, and how we navigate life. At the heart of overthinking is fear. The fear of making a mistake, of being judged, of missing an opportunity. And layered over that is the desire for control, the illusion that if we just think hard enough, plan long enough, analyze every angle, we can prevent failure and secure certainty. But the mind doesn't stop there. It loops. One thought leads to another, predicting outcomes that may never happen, rehearsing regrets that have already passed, imagining criticisms that may never arrive. Decisions become paralyzing, relationships overanalyzed, goals questioned again and again. You may start your day confident, only to find your own thoughts undermining you by noon. You feel stuck, yet you cannot turn off the machinery of your own mind. You chase clarity, but clarity eludes you. You chase certainty, but life remains uncertain. It is also why so many of us tie our identity to results. If the project fails, you are a failure. If the conversation goes wrong, you are awkward. If the choice is imperfect, you are incapable. The mind convinces you that your worth depends on constant vigilance, on anticipating every outcome, on avoiding missteps at all costs. and so you stay trapped in a cycle of reactive thinking, where the present moment is never enough, where peace is always postponed until the right decision is made, until the perfect outcome arrives, which it rarely does. You may recognize this in yourself, in the tension in your shoulders, the knot in your stomach, the restless energy that never sleeps. You may even catch yourself thinking, why can't I just relax? Why can't I stop overanalyzing? That question itself is proof of the loop. Your mind critiquing itself while you long for relief. Yet this is not a flaw. It is a consequence of the environment we live in and the habits we have unknowingly reinforced. Understanding it is the first step toward freedom. There is another way to exist, one that doesn't rely on control, constant evaluation, or mental loops. There is a path where the mind moves fluidly, where decisions come naturally, where your sense of self is not chained to outcomes or fear. It is subtle, yet powerful, and it begins with seeing the patterns that bind you. Once you recognize the machinery of overthinking, you can learn to step outside it, to shift from a life driven by anxiety and anticipation to one guided by flow and presence. The modern mind may be trapped, but it can also be liberated, and that liberation begins here. Imagine a space where the mind is not grasping, where thoughts rise and fall like ripples on a calm lake, never sticking, never clinging. This is the essence of Ku no Sekai, the world of emptiness, a concept cultivated by Japanese monks, samurai, and artists for centuries. It is often misunderstood as nothingness, but that is misleading. Ku no Sekai is not the absence of life or action. It is the presence of freedom, the pause between breaths, the clarity that comes when the mind stops wrestling with itself. Picture a clear sky at dawn, the horizon stretching without interruption, or water flowing effortlessly around stones in a river. That is the feeling of emptiness. Not a void, but a space where energy moves naturally, where decisions arise without strain, and where action emerges without resistance. In the lives of samurai, emptiness was a form of power. When facing an opponent, the warrior could not hesitate, could not overthink, because hesitation was death. Through disciplined training, they learned to empty their minds of distraction and fear, allowing their instincts to align with the present moment. Every movement became precise, every strike effortless. Similarly, Japanese monks would sit in silent meditation for hours, cultivating a spacious awareness that was not reactive, but deeply receptive. Artists too embraced emptiness. A calligrapher's brush glides across paper without forcing the stroke. A painter allows the ink to flow naturally, filling the page with forms that emerge spontaneously, as if the hand itself has learned to listen to the void. Across all these practices, the principle is the same. When the mind ceases to cling, when it stops resisting, a natural flow emerges that is both effortless and profoundly creative. At its core, Ku no Sekai teaches three subtle but transformative principles. The first is non-grasping, the understanding that trying to control outcomes only tightens the grip of tension. When we stop clinging to ideas, plans, or expectations, our mental energy becomes available for real engagement with life. The second is non-resistance, the willingness to allow experiences to arrive without pushing or pulling, to accept reality as it unfolds. Resistance, after all, is the invisible weight that keeps us trapped in loops of overthinking. And third is spacious awareness, a consciousness that observes without judgment, noticing thoughts and sensations without being swept away by them. This awareness is not passive. It is an active clarity that allows decisions, creativity, and movement to arise naturally, like the wind shaping the surface of the water. You may be wondering if this is a state reserved for monks or elite warriors, something unattainable in the chaos of modern life. The truth is, you can train this state too. It begins with small moments, a deep breath, a pause before reacting, a conscious release of tension in your body. Over time, the mind learns to move like water, to hold space for life rather than being swept into the currents of distraction and fear. Ku no Sekai is not an escape. It is a mastery of presence, a practice that transforms how you relate to thought, emotion, and action. In emptiness, you are not empty. You are full of possibility, alive with a calm, potent energy that flows through every decision and every gesture. This is the world the samurai moved through, the monks inhabited, and the artists expressed. It is a world you can inhabit as well, beginning the moment you allow your mind to stop clenching and simply flow. Most of us live with what could be called the tight mind. It grips, it constrains, it predicts, and it doubts. Every choice becomes a calculation, every conversation a test, every moment a potential failure. The designer agonizes over a single line, erasing and redrawing, afraid it is not perfect. The student rewrites notes endlessly, convinced that if they miss one detail, their future will unravel. The martial artist hesitates before a strike, overthinking movement that should be instinctive. The person sitting across from heartbreak analyzes every word, every glance, replaying what went wrong, wishing they could rewind time. Tight minds are tense minds. They hold on so fiercely to control that every action becomes laborious, every thought heavy, and every day a struggle. The energy we expend trying to micromanage life leaves us exhausted, disconnected from ourselves, and constantly behind the very flow we seek. And yet, there is another way, the flowing mind. Unlike the tight mind, it does not fight or cling. It observes, responds, and moves with clarity. It feels without suppressing. It sees without overanalyzing. A flowing mind does not resist what is happening. It dances with it. Imagine that same designer, brush in hand, letting the form emerge naturally, trusting the rhythm of creation. Picture the student reading, absorbing and integrating knowledge instead of forcing retention, feeling the understanding deepen without struggle. The martial artist reacts instinctively, every motion precise, every breath synchronized with the movement of the opponent, unburdened by hesitation. Even heartbreak can be navigated differently, allowing the grief to wash through, honoring the pain, and moving forward with compassionate awareness, rather than analyzing endlessly how it should have happened. Flow is not about passivity. It is about responsiveness, engagement, and clarity emerging from letting go. Flow is subtle, yet it transforms how we inhabit reality. It begins with small shifts in mindset, almost imperceptible at first. The first is loosening the grip, noticing where you are holding on to thoughts, plans, and outcomes, and consciously allowing them to be as they are without forcing control. The second is returning to the present moment, grounding attention in what is directly in front of you, a sound, a breath, a sensation, instead of chasing what might happen or what has already passed. The third is allowing feelings to move, instead of suppressing them or overanalyzing them. Emotions are energy, and when they are acknowledged and let flow, they lose the power to trap the mind in loops of tension. Each of these shifts is small, but combined, they open a doorway into a mind that is flexible, alert, and alive. You may not notice the transition immediately. One day, you may catch yourself reacting without overthinking, making a decision that feels natural, or creating something that surprises even you. A tight, rigid inner world gives way to spaciousness, and suddenly, life feels lighter, brighter, and more possible. The change is not about perfection or control. It is about presence, alignment, and trust in the intelligence that arises when you stop forcing. The flowing mind sees opportunity without anxiety, meets challenges without paralysis, and moves with the rhythm of life rather than against it. This is the mind that has guided artists, warriors, thinkers, and ordinary people through extraordinary moments. It is within reach. You can practice it. You can train yourself to release the grip, to allow presence, and to let action arise effortlessly. The shift from thinking to flow is not an escape from life. It is an immersion into it, fully, freely, and without unnecessary struggle. And in that immersion, the mind discovers what it has been longing for all along: clarity, energy, and a sense of being at home in the moment. Entering Kuno Sekai is not about grand gestures or complicated rituals. It begins with small, deliberate moments that shift the mind from clinging to flowing. One of the simplest practices is what can be called the one-breath reset. In any moment of tension or overthinking, pause and take a single deep breath, feeling it fill your body fully and then release naturally. Notice the subtle spaces between the inhale and the exhale. In that brief pause, the mind begins to unclench, and a small current of clarity rises. It is not about forcing calm or controlling thoughts, but allowing the body and mind to return to their natural rhythm. You may feel resistance at first, The mind insists on racing, replaying, analyzing, but with repeated attention, even one breath can reset your internal state and remind you that you are not trapped in thought. Another practice is the 30-second release. Whenever you feel mental tension building, regret, worry, self-criticism, set a timer in your mind for 30 seconds. During that time, allow the feelings to move through you without judgment, imagining them flowing out like water down a stream. Let the tightness in your chest, the tension in your shoulders, or the racing thoughts simply pass through. This is not suppression, nor is it distraction. It is gentle acknowledgement and release. You may notice that after those 30 seconds, decisions feel lighter, your perspective sharper, and the energy that once felt heavy now moves freely. Repeating this practice throughout the day trains the mind to recognize that thoughts and emotions are not permanent chains, but passing phenomena. And in that recognition, space for flow naturally arises. See, don't interpret is another subtle yet profound shift. How often do we immediately label experiences, assign meaning, or assume motives? What if instead, you simply observe what is happening without interpretation? The sound of rain, the tone of a colleague, the emotion in a conversation. Notice it, feel it, and let it exist without adding narrative. When we stop layering our judgments and stories onto every moment, a spacious awareness opens. The world appears in sharper contrast, and choices emerge organically. Action is no longer reactive or burdened by imagined consequences. It is responsive, aligned, and effortless. The spacious pause is a practice of noticing the space between moments. When transitioning from one task to another, instead of rushing, take a deliberate pause, even if only for a breath or two. Feel the boundaries between what just ended and what is beginning. This pause creates a subtle emptiness that is fertile with insight, allowing the mind to refresh rather than carry the residue of previous activity. Over time, these small pauses accumulate, transforming how you move through life. More deliberate, more present, more attuned to flow. Let the moment speak first. In conversations, in decisions, in creative endeavors, resist the urge to preempt or control. Allow the unfolding of reality to present itself before responding. This practice cultivates patience and trust in the intelligence of the present moment. You begin to notice that life often provides answers or guidance when we stop forcing them, and that action taken from flow is more precise, more authentic, and more satisfying than action taken from tension or fear. Each of these practices is simple, yet their effect is cumulative. The more you engage with them, the more the internal energy shifts from mental noise to calm clarity. The mind learns not to chase, not to clutch, not to anticipate endlessly. Slowly, you become someone who flows, someone who meets life without resistance, someone who moves through challenges with grace rather than struggle. The one-breath reset, the 30-second release, seeing without interpreting, the spacious pause, and letting the moment speak first are not just techniques. They are ways of cultivating an inner landscape where thought and feeling coexist without clinging, where presence itself becomes the source of action and insight. In practicing emptiness daily, you discover a rhythm of life that is effortless yet potent, simple yet transformative. Each breath, each pause, each conscious release is a step into Ku no Sekai. You begin to notice that creativity arises more freely, decisions flow more naturally, and relationships unfold with greater ease. Challenges remain, but their weight diminishes, and your capacity to navigate life grows. Over time, this practice becomes a part of who you are. You do not need to search for flow. You become the flowing mind, the calm center, the presence that meets life without struggle. The more you train emptiness, the more effortless your movement through life becomes. And the more you realize that Ku no Sekai is not a distant ideal, but a living, breathing reality accessible in every moment you choose to pause, release, and let flow. Remember the mind at the beginning of this journey, racing, looping, tangled in endless thought, restless and strained? That was a mind gripping life too tightly, trying to force outcomes, overanalyzing every moment, and measuring self-worth by control and certainty. Now imagine the same mind, not empty, but open, not passive, but flowing. It moves like water around obstacles, like wind through trees, like sunlight spreading effortlessly across a quiet morning. The tension has softened, the relentless chatter has quieted, and space has appeared where there was once only pressure. Decisions no longer feel like battles. Challenges are met with clarity rather than panic, and even moments of uncertainty carry a gentle curiosity instead of fear. A person living with Ku no Sekai does not escape life, they inhabit it fully. The student approaches study with focused attention, yet without judgment. The designer allows inspiration to emerge naturally, without forcing perfection. The martial artist reacts with instinct and presence, precise yet relaxed. The heartbroken individual experiences emotion fully, letting grief flow through instead of trapping it in endless analysis. Life becomes a dialogue rather than a struggle, a dance rather than a contest. The mind no longer resists reality. It meets it, responds, and moves with it. There is a rhythm to each moment, a natural intelligence that arises when tension is released. And suddenly, even ordinary experiences feel luminous, full of depth and possibility. You may notice subtle changes first, the pause before reacting, the clarity of a choice that feels right without second-guessing, the ease of presence in conversations. These moments accumulate, forming a new relationship with thought, feeling, and action. The mind learns that it does not need to control, that it does not need to force, that it is capable of resting in spaciousness while still engaging fully with life. You are not less attentive or less responsible. You are simply unburdened by the weight of constant anticipation. Every breath, every pause, every conscious release reinforces a habit of flow. And over time, the flow becomes your natural state. And this is the quiet promise of Ku no Sekai. When you loosen the mind's grip, life begins to move with you, not against you. The current of existence is no longer a threat to navigate, but a partner to engage. The clarity you gain allows you to act with purpose, without struggle, to create without tension, to feel without suppression. Presence becomes effortless because it is not imposed. It is discovered, nurtured, and trusted. You begin to recognize the intelligence in emptiness, the freedom in space, and the power in allowing life to unfold rather than trying to force it into predefined shapes. So begin today, even in a small way. A breath, a pause, an observation without judgment. Each step is a step into flow. The mind may resist at first, but patience and persistence gradually cultivate a calm, spacious awareness. And as you practice, you realize something subtle yet profound. Life is not meant to be gripped tightly, controlled rigidly, or overthought endlessly. It is meant to move, and in learning to move with it, you become what you have always sought: present, free, and alive, flowing like water, open like sky, and at home in the world around you.